Next, we're going back to our peers for help. In any project, it can be difficult to see the trees or the forest or the reverse. That's because our minds' workings are determined by the two very different lobes of our brains. The left side is for detail, analytical work, and the right side is best for less intangible, more artistic types of reality. Now, instead of reviewing the big picture ideas, the forest that our peers helped us with before, we'll ask them to look at the detail. The trees. Yes, we're getting to the grammar and the spelling and the punctuation and all that kind of good stuff. The creative geniuses of writing have seldom walked alone. Twain, K Rowling's, even J.R.R. Tolkien needed a little assistance. A recent film about Charles Dickens depicted the creative turmoil he experienced writing A Christmas Carol. If a guy ever had a brainstorm, it was Dickens. But through it all, he had a patient friend to give him encouragement, perspective, and guidance. None of us can review our literary work from an objective perspective. We're too caught up in the beauty of our creation to consider changing an idea, tweaking a sentence, or even noting a misspelled word. The artist sees the splendor of what is in their head and sometimes doesn't notice that they have not transferred that splendor to the written page. Who is there to help us? Last time, we revised our draft with a focus on expressing ourselves concisely, consistently, and clearly. Today, we ask our peers to be editors, a much more authoritative role than what they did for us as reviewers.
One perspective is not enough to see what's happening. If you are standing in the forest, you may see dozens of trees, but they won't tell you if you are in a small or a giant forest. To see the forest, you may have to fly over it or view it from a mountain. To get perspective on your paper, you will need one or more other views of your work. It's time to call on your peers again to give you a different perspective. This time, they'll be looking at your success in expressing yourself clearly, consistently, and concisely. Here's what your peer editors need to do. Their job is a lot like that of a magazine or newspaper editor. Not to change your story, but to make sure it's done professionally. Does it meet overall standards of quality? Are there alternative ways of expressing things that might be better? Is what you've written clear and consistent in its style? You can't jump around from writing comedy in one section to writing serious drama in another, and then back again to something that's not consistent. Errors and contradictions. If we write our work in little pieces and just focus on one section at a time, those sections might be good, but they may not be consistent. They may not flow with the other paragraphs that we're working on. So we need to make sure that our essay both doesn't have mistakes and that it flows from one section to another in a way that the reader is able to comprehend both the individual paragraphs and the writing as a whole. Is it engaging? Is it not boring? Sometimes we get into our scientific type of writing mode and we write stuff that is just not interesting. What we're writing, particularly if you're doing something like a self-introduction, it needs to be lively, it needs to be interesting, and better your peers to tell you that than your teacher. Okay, let's look at the 3-paragraph essay, because that's essentially what we're writing in this project. You're going to start with an interesting title. We'll talk about interesting titles on another date, but we've already made it clear the title of your essay, if you're writing about yourself, should not be, "Who am I?" That's a little too trite. You need a good introduction. Then you need 3 paragraphs which support what you've said in your introduction. And then finally, you need a conclusion that leaves your reader satisfied with what you've written and anxious to hear the next bit of writing that you're likely to come up with. So let's look at it in detail, because these details recur whether you are writing a self bio or whether you are writing a persuasive bit of work or whether you are writing philosophy. The first thing you need in the introduction is to get people's attention. So that's the hook. That's how you pull them into your little area and get them to start listening to you. So, why would I be interested in what you have to say? Give me a good question. Give me something provocative that makes me want to go a little further. Proposal. What do you think? Now, in a lot of essays, that's going to be a thesis. In this essay, it's going to be something to do with why it should be interesting for people to know something about you. And then kind of a preview. And basically what should be in the preview part of the introduction is a reference to the 3 paragraphs that follow. Each of those is a separate subtopic that supports your overall proposal, thesis, idea. These 3 support paragraphs, they should all have 3 things in common. 1, they should support what you have introduced at the beginning. They should tie basically to the sentence in which you say, I believe such and such because this, and this. And now you're going to give itemized support for what this, and this mean and why they are important to your topic. So support what you had to say. Connect it to with detail to the initial proposal, and then finally explain why this is important, because we've gone through a long process of determining what are the most important things to write about. Now you're telling the reader, and you just do this 3 times around 3 different topics that support your overall thesis or introduction. And then finally, we do the conclusion, and we restate the proposal. We give a little bit of the key evidence again, if we can fit that in a little bit, and what's the major point that supports what you've had to say so far. And then finally, there's a call to action. There's some parting shot that makes people feel like they've come to the end, they've got something useful, and they're going to go forward and do something. Because remember, no matter what we're doing, whether we're doing a self-intro, or whether we're doing a persuasive essay, or whether we're doing something scientific, we are trying to persuade people to change what they think, to do something different. And so if we can't give our conclusion and then talk about the future for our reader, then we may not have written on a worthwhile topic. Let's take a look at that conclusion again, because this is where I find students have the most difficulty. It's got three parts: the proposal, the support, and the action. So the proposal is just a repetition of what we wrote about in the first paragraph. We said we were going to do a certain thing, that we were going to prove a certain point. We supported that assertion in the support paragraphs, and now we're coming back in our conclusion and we're saying, remember this main point that we brought up, because this is what proves our assertion. And then finally, you're going to say that, what comes next? What actions are there that might get taken as a result of reading your essay? Your essay is not a phone book. It's not a list. It's not a note. It's not an email. It's a document that's meant to change the world. Even in the most basic freshman English class, you should be writing with the idea that if someone reads this, they're going to react to it. One last bit of information, one last bit of something to look for that your peers should be looking for, and this is around the topic of less is more. It's sometimes a lot easier to write a lot of words and to be verbose than it is to come to the point, to say what we have to say. Well, one of the leaders in the field of writing English was a fellow by the name of William Strunk. And he wrote a book 100 years ago that made key points about how to write. And strangely enough, that book is still in print and it's still true. And it's only about 90 pages long. So if you don't have it, get it. You can get it for free online. Just a hint, just ask for it. The Elements of Style, it's going to pop up. You're going to be able to get it, or you can buy it for a couple of dollars online. All right, more is less. Vigorous writing is concise. A sentence should contain no unnecessary words. A paragraph, no unnecessary sentences. For the same reason that drawing should have no unnecessary lines and a machine no unnecessary parts. This is what we call wisdom. So your peers should be looking for wasted space, wasted words, wasted sentences that really don't do anything. Take them out. It's painful, but take them out because your reader will thank you later on. Here's some examples of some words and phrases that I find particularly annoying. In my opinion. Well, yeah, of course it's in your opinion. You're the one writing. So you don't need to have that. You can take that phrase out every time it appears and it will not change the sentence or anything that you're writing. I think pretty much the same thing of, well, yeah, we know you're thinking, take it out. You don't need to say that I think. I believe, same idea. Literally, really? That's just such, it sounds good, but it's kind of like a fancy way of saying, duh, the kinds of things where you just kind of fill space with a word that does nothing. Virtually, same deal. Always and never, come on, who needs that? In conclusion, well, if you're writing your conclusion and it's the last paragraph, we know it's in conclusion, so very seldom will that be a worthwhile phrase to use. And finally, well, we pretty much know it's finally. So I'm not saying you can never use any of these, but what I am saying is use them judiciously. If it's really in conclusion, good. Okay, I'll get you that one. You can have that one in your last paragraph. If it's finally, if you're writing about a series of things and you come to finally, okay. But if you have finally 3 or 4 times in your paragraphs or in your essay, you are using finally way too much. So we're nearly done.